experiments. So I'll discuss one experiment and Professor Manish Kaushal will discuss one experiment, and the other two experiments will be taken care by Professor Kaustav Ray and Professor Amarnath Samanto. So I'll discuss on the pitot tube today. Right. So let us try to understand how this pitot tube works and what is its application and all these things. Now I'll try to give you an idea of how the actual instrument looks in the lab. Although it's very difficult to get a feel over this online mode, specifically because this is a hands-on experiment which you are supposed to do. But anyways, I will try my best to give you a feel. And whenever you don't understand anything, you can just stop me and ask questions. There is no problem. Right. The whole purpose is to make you understand and get a feel of how the things work. So to start with, let me share my screen. Let me share my screen. So can any one of you tell me, like, what do you understand by this, or what idea you have on this pitot tube so far? Because you had already gone through this fluid mechanics course, so you must have some idea of what is pitot tube and how it works. Any one of you, any idea?
It converts the kinetic head into pressure head.
Yes, and then what we do with that kinetic head?
By the pressure, we can know the exact velocity of fluid.
Okay.
Not
So
exact, approximate.
okay, you are almost close by. So in pitot tube or in many of the flow measuring instrument, or rather in most of the flow measuring instrument, what we actually measure. Obviously, the meters are flow meters. So our whole idea is to uh, get an idea of the flow rate of the fluid which is flowing inside a duct or flowing anywhere. But we don't measure the flow directly, right? So we measure something and then we convert that measured thing into the flow. So what we measure in most of the flow measuring devices?
Pressure head by
Yes,
piezometric
yes,
pattern.
pressure rate. So, and what is the basic principle, like how we can convert this pressure head into velocity or the flow rate? Like based on your basic fluid mechanics understanding.
Conservation.
Bernoulli's equation.
Yeah, Bernoulli's equation we mostly use. So before going into the details of that, let's first try to see what is a pitot tube. The name pitot tube, named after a French engineer, Henri Pitot. So this has nothing to do with the working principle or anything. This is just a brief history. And this is a sensing element of a differential pressure measurement that is used to measure flow velocity of liquid and gases, including steam. Right. Can any one of you tell me where you have seen pitot tube? In maybe in some of the very well-known or popular vehicle that we come across. I am giving you a hint. Anyone? Any idea?
Aeroplane?
Yes, right. Aeroplane. So why specifically aeroplane uses this pitot tube? Why not the normal cars and normal like normal vehicle that runs on ground? Any idea?
I guess because of the value, like the vehicle which run on ground has very low velocity as compared with the aeroplanes. So the amount of error which we get is quite negligible in that in case of aeroplanes.
Okay. Not exactly right, but like in pitot tube or in most of the like flow measuring instrument, wherever we use this Bernoulli's equation. So this Bernoulli's equation itself has some constraint and assumptions. Any idea what is the restriction of Bernoulli's equation, or what are the assumptions behind Bernoulli's equation, and where do you think this Bernoulli's equation will work better compared to the other cases?
Steady and streamlined flow.
Right, that is one of the assumptions, but that has nothing to do with the altitude or
Less
aeroplane.
viscosity.
Yes, absolutely right. So how is that you can link with an aircraft and maybe a car?
As the density in the stratosphere is less, the viscosity is also supposed to be less.
Yes, right, absolutely right. So the one of the limitations of Bernoulli's equation, or the normal Bernoulli's equation that we use, is this is mostly written for an inviscid fluid, right? But whenever you have these viscous forces coming into place, we make some modification in the Bernoulli's equation. Anyone of you know like how we modify the Bernoulli's equation if we have a like relatively viscous flowing, or how we correct it? This has nothing to do with the Peter tube, but just for the sake of your knowledge. Any idea?
Maybe we add losses to it, like.
Yes, we do have
Yes,
add
sir.
losses to it,
Sure.
but suppose you have a viscous flow and you have an inviscid flow. So what would be the difference in the flow profile? Suppose you have a pipe where inside the pipe an inviscid fluid is flowing, and in another pipe a viscous fluid is flowing. Now, if I ask you to comment on the velocity profile, what would be the difference in these two cases?
Sir, in the viscous case, it would be parabolic in nature, while in like non-viscid, there will be like same velocity at each and every point, like in an area. There will be
Yes,
no velocity change.
absolutely right. So viscous effect is basically what is making a change in the local velocity at a specific cross section inside the pipe, right? Like this particular scenario is not tackled in Bernoulli's equation. So to correct it, we add something which is known as kinetic energy correction factor. I don't know whether you have heard of this term or not. There's a term called kinetic energy correction factor, which is designated as alpha. So we add this alpha in front of this v square by 2. And that alpha basically takes care of the velocity profile. That is how we correct the Bernoulli's equation. But we will not go into this part now. We will simply assume that the Bernoulli's equation is valid here, and we will try to see how we can use this Peter tube to get an. So what is the purpose of Peter tube? What we do with Peter tube?
To measure flow velocity of any liquid.
Okay, how it is different than a Venturi meter and an orifice meter?
The Venturi meter only gives the static pressure head, and here we get the stagnation pressure head value, that is the sum of static pressure head and dynamic pressure head.
Yes, right. So that is what we measure. But what we actually finally what we get out of this stagnation pressure information. So in both the cases, we get a velocity at the end, right? So how these velocities are different? The one that you measured using a Peter tube and the one that you measured using a Venturi meter or an orifice meter. Any idea? Let's take the example of this velocity where you have a velocity profile. So if I ask you to assess on the velocity profile based on some measuring instrument, can you do it using an orifice meter?
No, sir.
Can we do it using this Peter tube?
Yes, because we can
So-
adjust position where it is placed. And
Right. So what we are measuring here, we are measuring the stagnation pressure and we are converting it into a velocity which we termed as local velocity, not the average velocity. So we can get the local velocity here in Peter tube because of the size of the tube and the way the entire thing is designed. So you can get a point velocity, whereas in case of Venturi meter or an orifice meter, what you get is an average velocity. You get the flow rate and then you divided it with the area of cross section, you get the average velocity. But in Peter tube, you can get the point velocity at a specific location in a cross section. So that's the major difference between the Peter tube and the Venturi meter and the orifice meter or the rotameter. So let's look into the working principle of this Peter tube. So I don't know whether you must be know or not. So there, in terms of working principle, this Peter tube is mostly divided into two parts. One is called the simple Peter tube. My screen is visible to you, right?
Yes, sir, your screen is visible.
So suppose this is an arrangement of a Peter tube where you have a tube. This is nothing but a hollow tube, and the one side of the tube is attached to one limb of your manometer, and there is another tapping which is placed somewhat close to this Peter tube location, but exactly at a perpendicular direction compared to the position of this tube. So this tube is positioned exactly, the cross section would be exactly perpendicular to the flow direction. So the fluid will hit to the cross section of this tube, whereas the other tube is placed at a perpendicular position to this tube. Now, intuitively, you can understand, like when we don't have any flow, suppose this V is equal to 0, what would be the reading in here and here in these two tubes? When we don't have a flow,
it will be
Same
same.
reading.
it will be same, and it is same as static pressure. You agree with me? Because there's no velocity, only the hydrostatic pressure of the fluid is giving you some height inside the manometer, right? Agree? Yes or no?
Yes.
Okay, now we gradually increase the velocity. We started pumping the fluid and the fluid is now flowing. Now what would happen? The fluid would hit into this cross section of the tube and it will push some of the working fluid inside the manometer itself. And the manometric fluid which is placed somewhere here, that will be displaced by this fluid, by the pressure that will be exerted because of the velocity of the fluid. Now, because like after it reaches to an equilibrium, when this height is not changing at all, what is happening? The fluid particles that is coming and hitting this section is coming to a velocity which would be equal to 0 because this fluid has nowhere to go. Reaches to an equilibrium. So the entire kinetic head is converted into a pressure head, and that pressure we are designating it as stagnation pressure because here the velocity is equal to 0. Now the static pressure you can measure using this tapping of the manometer, which is placed at one cross section of the pipe, which is very close to the position of your Peter tube, and from this Peter tube itself, which is attached to a manometer, you can get the stagnation pressure. So that is one of the arrangement of getting both the static pressure and stagnation pressure, and how this will use to get the velocity that I will come later. Now you can make a different arrangement. You can make the arrangement like this, right? Instead of two tapping, you can just only use one tube. So how this tube you make? You make a hole at perpendicular location of this initial hole where the fluid particle is hitting the Peter tube. Now see the position of these two holes. So you attach the manometer with the outlet of this outside cross section where I am making the pointer. So this out. So this is completely a circular thing, and the hole is made at certain locations of the pipe surface, the pitot tube, the surface of the tube. Now again, think of a situation where you don't have a fluid flow. Where you don't have a fluid flow, so what this hole will give you? This is, see the placing of this hole. This is not feeling the velocity of the fluid. This is only feeling the pressure of the fluid. So when there is no flow, what would happen?
Static pressure.
This will give you static pressure. And this one, the manometer tube which is attached to this hole.
Stagnation.
No, when there is no flow, this one will also give you static pressure.
Yes, sir. When there is a flow, it will give stagnation.
Yes, when there is a flow, obviously your fluid will try to go inside and it will push the working liquid inside the tube. So once it reaches to an equilibrium, obviously the liquid will not move anywhere. So, and at that point you will get the reading which you will get, which is with the manometer which is attached to the center tube, will give you the stagnation pressure. And again, even if you have a flow, this hole, the manometer which is attached to this hole will always give you the static pressure, because this is not feeling the motion of the fluid, right? So this is how we attach. This kind of configuration is known as pitot static tube, and the first one configuration is known as simple pitot tube. The one that we have in our lab is the simple pitot tube. We don't have the pitot static tube, but this one is used in the aircraft. So how exactly this works in the aircraft, I'll show you a small video on that. You might get interested by looking into that. So this is the way the pitot static tube works. Construction wise, pitot static tube and normal pitot tube is different, but the working principle is exactly same. So only the difference is the way you are measuring the static pressure. That is the difference. So this is how you measure the static pressure using a pitot static tube, right? So let's maybe move to here. I'll try to find out how we can measure the velocity using this information. So let's try to use Bernoulli's equation, maybe at a point somewhere here. This touch screen will be a problem. No problem. So let's take this first example. Let's take 2 points. One exactly here. I'm marking this as maybe 1, and a point which is very close to the entry point of the pitot tube. I'm marking this point as 2. Now let us try to, the first point is here and the second point is somewhere here. Let's try to use the Bernoulli's equation. You tell me, I wanted to write the Bernoulli's equation between these 2 points. What should I write? Anyone? Anyone?
You're talking about the steady state condition.
Yeah, all
right,
the assumptions of Bernoulli's equation is valid.
Then P1 by rho plus V square, V square by 2 plus GZ1. Since Z is same, we can avoid that. So
Right.
P1 by rho plus V square by 2 is equal to P2 by rho plus
P2 square by 2.
yes.
Right. So let's, the rho is for what? Which rho I'm talking about here? The rho of the fluid which is flowing, right?
Yes, sir.
So
So let's take that to be water. So I'm marking as the W. Now, as per the concept of stagnation pressure and as per the current situation, your V2 is equal to 0. V1 is equal to 0, right?
Yes, sir.
Yes, sir.
Okay, let's change the 1 and 2 for the sake to make it consistent with the PPT. So I'm marking this as 2 and this as 1. V1 square by 2. Now, as per this image, V2 is equal to 0.
Yes, sir.
2 and 1. Fine. So what we are getting here, V1 square by 2 is equal to V2 minus V1 divided by flow of water. And we are getting V1 as equal to 2 delta P divided by flow of water. Now, how we will get this delta P?
The difference between the height of static pressure and stagnation pressure.
While I'm taking this assumption, the exactly the answer that you say, the height difference between the two limbs of your manometer will give us this pressure difference. I am assuming something. What I am assuming?
Flow is envisaged like
The flow is increased. I have already assumed. That's why I have used this. Only see based on the location of this 1 and 2. I am assuming something.
The only force acting on the body is gravity.
No. Ideally, the way I have drawn this image. Ideally, your 1 should be here. Right. Because there you have the manometer tapping, which is used to measure your static pressure. Are you getting my point? This is a very yes, go ahead.
We are assuming that the setup is completely horizontal, with like gravity is vertical at all points.
No, not gravity. It's basically the tapping I'm talking about. Suppose you have a pipe which is like this, and you have a manometer tapping here, which you are using to measure the static head. Right. Now you place the pipe here. Will you get the same static head? Or will there be a pressure drop from this point to this point?
So if the fluid is not accelerating, then we should get the same static head.
Yeah, that is an assumption. That is basically an assumption because here we are assuming the viscous loss is negligible. But ideally, you should get a different reading, right? Because
Yes.
there will be loss. There will be loss. So because everything is ideal here, that's why the location of 1 will not matter here.
Yes, sir.
But in actual case, because whatever you will be measuring through the instrument, that you are supposed to get the actual thing. So you should ideally place this static location as close as possible to the edge of your pitot tube to reduce error. But while calculating, we are basically making a theory which is where the things are very ideal. So it will not matter. And in case of pitot-static tube, it will not matter at all because see the location, these two are very close. This location and this location. These two are very close. Fine. Now, what would be this delta P? Because if we know delta P, we are in a position to find out the velocity. What would be delta V fluid static? You tell me. Suppose suppose the manometer has a height of h, not h. Let's take it y. Go by your manual. So here you have a tapping, and here you have your heater tube and some kind of manometer, and this is attached with the manometer. Very poor drawing. So in which limb the fluid height should be greater? Let's mark it 1 and 2 so that you can answer. Let's mark it 1 and 2. So where the fluid height would be more?
1.
2.
Suppose my manometer manometric fluid I am marking is blue. So it should be something like this. Agree? Fine. And the height difference is y. Now how will I get delta P out of this y? Because this y is the only measurable quantity that you will get from the experiment.
Rho gy.
Be careful. Is it rho gy? Which rho?
Rho of that air, that I guess. No, sir. Rho of fluid. Rho of fluid.
Okay, wait. Let me mark everything. Let's mark this to be a row of manometer, and here you have the row of water. So what is that? What is this delta P?
Difference of density.
Right. Do I have to derive this? I think you had gone through this fluid static course, so this should be very clear to you. Y multiplied by rho m minus rho w into
G.
G.
Right.
Right. Is it clear, or do I have to derive this? I think this you can derive.
Yes, sir, it's clear.
This is pretty straightforward. So let us now replace this delta P here. In terms of measurable quantity, maybe we can figure out. Don't go by the manual, the calculation that is given in the manual. Those things are not right. So let's replace this 2y rho manometer minus rho water into G divided by rho of water. So let's take the rho of water to be 1000. And the specific gravity of the manometric fluid, let's take it to be S. So I can write this. If I replace everything here, what I will get? 2 into y into S minus 1 into G. Right. Now this entire thing I am marking it as H. So this would be equal to 2GH, the V1. And what is this V1? V1 is the velocity when you position the pitot tube at a distance, let's say some centimeter, let's say x at a distance x from the edge of the pipe. Now, if you vary this x, do you expect any change in the measurable value? Let me zoom in so that you can see it. So this is based on a specific position of your pitot tube. Now, if I, instead of here, if I put the pitot tube somewhere here, which value should change?
H.
Velocity.
Velocity would change.
Measurable quantity will change. The measurable
Y will
quantity,
change.
yes, the measurable quantity here is y. Basically, we are converting this measured y into the v. Now, if your y is changing, obviously your h will change, and that will reflect on your v. So you will get a different velocity here compared to here. And if you place the pitot tube at different location of the pipe, what you will get? You will get point velocity at different location at a specific cross section. So you are not changing the cross section horizontal position, but you are just sliding the pitot tube, keeping it at a specific cross section. Right. So you will get different velocities. Now with your intuition, can you tell me, like, if I place the pitot tube here in one experiment, and if I place the pitot tube here in one experiment, I mean, these two are different experiments. This is experiment 1 and this is experiment 2. So in which case you expect the y to be more, because y is something which we are measuring.
Experiment 1,
Experiment 1.
Why?
because velocity will be greater, like in
The velocity
that
profile
point.
is parabolic, so it is expected to be greater when it's
Yes.
more towards the center.
Now comes to one of the assumptions. So we are assuming that here you are assuming that the flow is kind of parabolic. So the flow looks something like this, right? Now, when this assumption is valid?
When the fluid has viscosity.
When the fluid has viscosity, but even if the fluid has viscosity, you may not get exactly like this parabolic profile.
Fully developed flow?
Right, fully developed flow. So if I place the pitot tube, suppose this is your entire pipe. Suppose this is your entire pipe and your pipe starts from here. If I place the pitot tube somewhat here and here, what you will get? It's a tricky question. Let's see if any one of you can answer.
Same value is also possible, like same height, because
Yeah, same.
if it is fully developed flow, same height is possible.
No, this is at the entrance of the pipe. Your pipe is starting from here.
So it will be same.
Ideally, if we are exactly at the edge, it should be same. Why? Because it will be same as your free stream velocity everywhere. Now let's go a bit far, somewhere here, not very far. Again, same location. What you can expect?
Difference, like in experiment.
Depends on the values of the heights.
Yes, the second one is this experiment 2 is very close to the center, and this experiment 1 is very close to the wall. This is not exactly entrance, but very close to the entrance. Have you heard of the term developing region? Entrance length?
Yes, sir.
What do you understand by entrance length? Okay, entrance length has something to do with fully developed flow. Now, any one of you can answer.
Sir, the length after which the flow can be assumed to be fully developed. If the
Right,
length of the
absolute.
pipe is less than that, then it will be never fully, it will never develop fully.
So that region is called, because within your entrance length, that region is called developing flow region, where the flow is developing, not reached to a fully developed flow. So I am working in developing region in both the cases. Now, can any one of you tell me, like, if I do position these two, experiment 1 and experiment 2, where I should get higher value of y?
Sir, could you repeat?
So I am positioning this pitot tube in one experiment. Experiment 1, I am putting the pitot tube very close to the wall of the pipe, and I am putting the pitot tube at very close to the center of the pipe in experiment 2 at the same cross-sectional area. And the cross-section is located close to the entrance of the pipe. Now, suppose in this case, I get a y value, which is y1. I get a y value here as y2. Which one will be high, y1 or y2? This y is the
Y2 should
manometer.
be higher.
Yeah, y2 should be higher. And if we convert this y2 into a velocity v2, can you tell me which velocity is this one?
Greater than the free stream because it is in.
You cannot have something greater than free stream velocity.
Yes, sir.
It will be greater than that of y1.
Yeah,
Yes,
that's
it will be
true.
greater than of y1.
That's absolutely
Almost equal to free stream velocity.
yes, right. It should be equal to free stream velocity because I don't know whether you know the concept of boundary layer. You know, so this is how your boundary layer grows. This blue is boundary layer, and after this point, so this is marked as entrance length. See here, your flow is developing, and I'm positioning the pitot tube somewhere close to the wall, which falls into a region where your flow is developing, and the other one is located at a position where you have free stream. So this will give you the free stream velocity, and this will give you a velocity which is significantly less and very close to the no slip condition. These things are not covered yet. I think the boundary layer, formation of boundary layer and entrance length, all these things you know or you don't know.
Sir, entrance length was not taught to us.
So maybe in transport you will get to know all these things. This is how it works. So you know the fully developed flow. So let me draw it elaborately so that you understand. So this is how your boundary layer grows. This is how your boundary layer grows. And suppose you have a free stream velocity which is coming, hitting the pipe. Let's take it as u infinity. So your velocity profile will look something like this. It will start from 0 and reach to a value u infinity. So at the center you still have u infinity. So this is u infinity. and your flow gradually reduces to 0 at the walls. But after this point, like once you cross this fully developed this entrance length, your flow will become parabolic. Now, wherever you draw, it will remain the same. And what is the definition of fully developed flow? The general definition? Any one of you know? Suppose this is
The flow
I-
profile does not
Sir, the
change with-
velocity profile does not change after that. Like it's same.
so. I can give you a relatively better definition. The definition is no change in flow along the direction of the flow. No change in velocity, you can say, along the direction of the flow. So your direction of flow is x here. Suppose let's take it x. So there will be no change in velocity along the direction of x, but there will be change in velocity if we go radially in this direction. But see, within this entrance length, if you position your Peter tube at a location x1 from the entrance or at a location x2 from the entrance, you will get different velocity profile. So that is your velocity profile is changing along the direction of the flow within the entrance length. But after you cross the entrance length, there will be no change in velocity profile along the direction of the flow. So we generally place the Peter tube outside this entrance length. That is the whole point of this discussion. So outside this entrance length, we generally put the Peter tube. Otherwise, the position of the Peter tube will give you different velocity profile. Agree? Any questions?
No, sir.
Okay, so I have a small animation where instead of manometer, if you place a pressure transducer, you can directly make this measurement of pressure using the deformation of your diaphragm. See how it works. This is a pitot-static tube. So you put a diaphragm here. In the center point, you are making this. You are measuring the stagnation pressure, and the outside, from these holes, basically you are measuring the static pressure, and the difference is reflected in the deformation of the diaphragm. And you can calibrate this deformation directly with the pressure deformation. That is also one of the way we measure the pressure difference and then calibrate that into a velocity. Once you know the pressure, the rest part is pretty easy to calculate the velocity. Right, so working principle and everything I have mentioned here. So this is already I have discussed. So I'll share all these things, everything with you. The velocity calculation also I had mentioned here. And the next part is the way we calculated everything, what that will give us, a velocity that we will mark as this velocity. So this we will mark as the theoretical, because based on the theory we get this V. So we will mark this as VT, V theoretical. Fine. Now with this VT as a function of R we can measure. How we can do that? This is I had already discussed.
We change the position to Pitot tube
Yeah.
vertically.
Yeah, change the position of the Peter tube, keeping the Peter tube at a specific cross section. Right, that is what we do. So you place the Peter tube at this location and you change the position from here to here, here to here. So you will get a discrete velocity values. You will not get a continuous function here. You will get a discrete values of maybe V1, V2, V3, all these things. Right. But once you get all these points, you can make a graph. If you get the velocities like this, discrete points, you just fit it with a curve. use your MATLAB fitting tool and you feed it with a curve. So once you feed it with a curve, you will get a continuous function, V as a function of R. Now, once we get V as a function of R, can we calculate the flow rate? The theoretical flow rate, let's mark it as QT. How can we calculate that? It's a pipe with cylindrical cross section. So
area into average velocity.
not average velocity. Average velocity you don't know. You know the profile.
Integral VDR.
Yes,
Right,
so we'll
right.
integrate it and then we'll find.
Yes.
guess.
You just have to area integrate. So this you can either do numerical integration or you can fit it with the curve and then do an analytical integration. Whatever you want. So for this, what information you need to know this distance, the entire distance, right? And what you need, the y values at different, the y means the deflection in the manometer at different position of your Pitot tube. This is what you need from the experiment. Agree or any questions? So what you need from the experiment is basically the location of this point and the corresponding y at this point, at these different points. So at each and every point, you need two information. One is the position, another is the y, deflection in the manometer. If you get these two values, then you can assess the velocity at this point. These two you will get from the experiment. What you were supposed to do, which you couldn't able to do, you would have placed the Pitot tube at different locations, and there was a scale located at the lab. So whenever you get a chance to come back to campus, just you can look at this instrument once. So from this scale you will get the position, and from the manometer reading you will get the y. So once you get these two information, now you are in a position to calculate the theoretical volumetric flow rate. Now there is a relation. It says the actual flow rate is something, a coefficient of Pitot tube, people write it as CV, into QT. What is the significance of this CV? Why this Q and QT are not same? Why the theoretical estimated flow rate and the actual flow rate that you will get?
Because the fluid has some viscosity and we assume there's no viscosity.
That is one of the reasons. There can be many factors. I can tell you one or two, but rest you can think and write it in the report as a conclusion. Like this can be the cause of difference in. So ideally, if your Pitot tube is very ideal and it is working in a very perfect way, ideally this CV, what should be the value of this CV?
1.
1. And in actual case, should it be greater than 1 or less than 1?
Less than.
Less than. So it should vary from. I mean, the maximum value should be 1, and it should be less than 1. I don't know. In most of the cases, we get this value to be very close to 1, 0.6 and 0.8, 0.6 to 0.95 or 0.8, somewhat like that. It depends. This is one of the factors you said that the viscosity we are neglecting. What can be the other cause of reduction of CV? Increase of CV means you are working in a very ideal condition. A less value of CV says that something is wrong. The one cause is obviously the viscous force we are neglecting here, the loss due to viscous. What can be the other? Just mechanically, just intuitively you think like what can be the other causes?
So while measuring the pressure difference, like there will be surface tension as well. So
Good.
you have to take care about that.
Good.
Otherwise,
Very
you have to take very a good amount of diameter of that manometer.
Yes,
For that, we
good.
need very high velocity.
Yes. So the if your manometer tube is significantly small, due to the surface tension, there is something called capillary rise. I think you know all these things. So this, even without the absence of any flow, you can see a rise even in the absence of everything. If you just put a tube vertically opposite, you'll see that the fluid is rising. That is solely due because of the surface tension. So that is something which we are neglecting here, which is not encountered anywhere. That can be one of the reasons. Any other? Very good.
Sir, it can be the case
They,
where we put the pitot tube in the development region.
Yeah, that is one of the cases, but that is generally not a concern because we usually put this pitot tube very far away from the entrance just to get rid of this problem. So you are saying that the condition of fully developed flow may not be valid, which is true. I mean, I'm not disagreeing, but that you can check, like that you can check by positioning the pitot tube somewhere here and somewhere here. See whether you are getting the same velocity profile or not. If you are getting the same velocity profile, that means okay, you are working in a location which is away from the entrance point. But that can be one of the concerns. Not bad. Anything else?
so there could be air bubbles in pitot tube earlier before starting the experiment. If we do not remove that, then
Yeah, that generally we remove. So we make it sufficiently clean and everything. So that may not be a cause.
There can be the temperature change, which might lead to the change in density. Minor change.
Yeah, that would be very minor change. So that would be actually very minor change. But that you can take care of by taking the density at that specific temperature. Now the thing is the change in density of the manometric fluid and the change in density of the working fluid with temperature is different. So if you take care of both the things, you can correct that. So these are possible errors. I mean, obviously you can write all these things. The other error may be like with time the pitot tube may get clogged, and that might lead to wrong in the reading in manometer. Another thing is from this point, if you look at very carefully, these are very from this point to this point, there might be frictional loss, which we are not encountering. So all these small things can lead to an error. So that is why we need to know this CV value. CV is basically the if you know the CV value, then your pitot tube is calibrated. This theoretical velocity you can calculate. This theoretical discharge you can calculate based on the manometer reading. So simply you multiply it with CV and you get the actual velocity. Now, how will you get this actual velocity? Actual flow rate, not velocity. This QT you can calculate, fine. How will you get this QA?
we will fill any tank and we will see how much tank is filled within a given time. We will get QA.
Yeah, that is one of the way you can get. But in this experiment, what we do, we attach the rotameter in the section itself. So if you see this is the instrument. There you can see there you have a rotameter. This is a rotameter which is placed at the entrance of your pipe, and this is something which is giving you the flow rate, and you are comparing the flow rate that you have measured using this theoretical calculation and using the pitot tube with the velocity that you get from the rotameter, and based on that you are calculating the QV. Now can you tell me what can be another possible error?
Sir, the rotameter itself.
The rotameter has to be calibrated. So you are comparing something with the actual velocity, which may not be actual because that is also measured using some other different instrument. So these are limitations of this experiment. So if things are very clear to you, I mean, you can appreciate that this is why we are deflecting actually from the ideality case. And also the position of your rotameter. See, the rotameter is positioned here, and you are measuring the velocity somewhere here. Let me. Your rotameter is placed here, and you are measuring the velocity here. So there can be a frictional loss during this path also, which you are not encountering. So all these are basically your limitations. So I have I don't know, do you have some time or do you have other engagement? I can show you one video. This one is very nice, where you can see that how pitot tube is used to like get the velocity in an aircraft. Do people have time, sir? Like around 10 minutes?
Yes, sir.
Yes, sir.
Yes, sir.
Then I can show you.
Yes,
this,
sir.
show you this video, but for that I need to first share the. Let me. Include computer science. Okay.
The pitot-static system. The pitot-static system is connected
So can you hear it?
Yes, sir, we can hear it.
Okay.
Yes, sir.
to the airplane's altimeter, airspeed indicator, and the vertical speed indicator. These instruments tell the pilot how high they are, how fast they are going, and how fast they climb or descend.
So how fast they are going, that is our concern. That we will focus on. The rest too is, I mean, it's for your interest you can see, but this is where the pitot tube is of use.
These are determined by measuring the pressure of the atmosphere. Before we go any further, let us become familiar with the atmosphere. If we take a column of air, starting at the ground, and traveling up all the way into space, you notice that the molecules of air at the Earth's surface are much more compacted together than the molecules up in space. The reason for this is gravity. Since air is matter, it has weight. So, all the air molecules at the top of the column are pushing down on the molecules below them, which compresses them. This compression results in a higher pressure at sea level compared to the pressure on top of a mountain. How much of a pressure change are we talking about? Well, if we say the atmosphere goes up to about 375 miles above the surface of the Earth, 50% of those air molecules would be found in the first 18,000 feet of the surface. So, because the pressure of the atmosphere decreases the higher up we go, our pitot-static instruments are able to measure that pressure and calculate our altitude and speed. The pitot-static system gathers its pressure information from two sources, the pitot tube and the static ports, hence the name pitot-static. The pitot tube is designed to measure the pressure of the air as the airplane flies through it. In most smaller aircraft, this tube is located under the wing so it can measure the flow of air without any interference. Sometimes aircraft manufacturers will use a pitot mast instead of a tube shape, but it still functions exactly the same way. On the backside of the tube, there is a drain hole, which allows any rain or water that is collected while flying to drain out and not go into the system. Finally, the pitot tube can also be heated. This is used to prevent ice from forming on the tube, which could potentially block the hole and prevent the system from functioning correctly. The counterpart of the pitot tube is the static port. The location of this port will vary with different aircraft designs, but should be in a location where it can measure the static pressure of the air, unaffected by the dynamic airflow around the airplane. On the Cessna 172, the static port is located on the left side of the forward fuselage. The pitot tube and static port openings are connected to tubes that join into the pitot-static instruments. The pressure inside the instruments match the pressure of the outside atmosphere. All three
This is exactly same as two ports of our manometer.
pitot-static instruments connect to the static port, but only the airspeed indicator connects to the pitot tube. Sounds simple, right? Let's discuss how each pitot-static instrument works. Altimeter. Perhaps the most
I'll directly go to the velocity measurement.
airspeed indicator. The airspeed indicator is the only pitot-static instrument that uses both input from the static port and the pitot tube. The pitot tube is used to measure what's called ram pressure. The faster the airplane travels, the greater the ram pressure is. The ram air entering the pitot tube gets sent to the airspeed indicator and, similar to before, goes into a diaphragm. The greater the pressure, the more the diaphragm expands. So the diaphragm will expand as the airspeed increases. Then, through mechanical linkages, the appropriate airspeed will display on the front of the instrument. But what about the static port, you ask? Well, remember how the pressure of the atmosphere changes with altitude? Well, if this wasn't taken into account, then the airspeed would indicate different speeds at different altitudes, even if the plane was actually going the same speed. To fix this, the static port connects and fills the case surrounding the diaphragm with static air. This will subtract out the static air pressure that the pitot tube captured and only allow for the dynamic pressure to be read on the instrument. This keeps the airspeed indicator reading the correct values no matter what the altitude of the airplane is. The face of the instrument displays color-coded speed ranges that the pilot should be aware of while they fly, to avoid exceeding any limitations of the aircraft. The green arc is for normal operations. The white arc is when you're allowed to extend the flaps. The yellow arc is limited to flight in smooth air only, and the red line indicates the maximum allowed speed.
Fine, you get some idea how it
Yes,
works?
Gyroscopic instruments.
Yes, sir.
Yes.
The gyroscopic instruments include the attitude indicator.
So that is more or less all about the pitot tube. I think I have given you a fair idea. So let's look into the table that you will get from us. So this is the nozzle height is basically the location of your nozzle. That is what I had talked about. And this is the manometer reading. And this is marked as H. I think, I don't know whether this H is the H that I discussed or this is Y. I think this is same as Y for our case. The way I have marked the Y. So this is basically the height, manometer height. And this you have for 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 5 different flow rates. So for 5 different flow rates, you have all the data. I'm not very sure of how this nozzle height is measured here. Can you comment on anything looking into the numbers? How this is positioned? Any idea?
The manometer height first increases and then decreases, so it must be from the edge and then crossing the middle of the tube.
Yeah, I think that because the middle of the tube marked as, I think when your position is somewhat around 1. So that is where you are getting the maximum manometer reading, 4.0. And that is same for all cases. When you increase the velocity flow rate, this is 4.2, this is 6. So you figure out based on this nozzle height. The concept, I think, more or less clear to you. And if you see some discrepancy in these readings, then you can fix it accordingly. Ideally, you should extrapolate it to a position where your velocity would be equal to 0 at the 2 edges. That is the no-slip boundary condition. So you extrapolate this 3.5 to 0. Right, and from this way you can calculate from this reading you can calculate the Q theoretical, and this is Q actual, and this Q theoretical versus Q actual is something which you have to plot. So you have to plot either way. You can plot Q. The slope will give you the value of, here you can plot Q actual, here you can plot Q theoretical, and you will get few data points, and the slope will give you the value of CV. And if you know the CV, you calibrated the Peter tube. So that is all about Peter tube, and you tell me what information you need from me. The specific gravity of manometer is also given. So I'll share this observation table with you. I'll share the PPT as well, and I think that's it. Fine. Do you have any questions?